the Savage Daughter podcast. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about addiction and how growing up with somebody who had some sort of addiction issue could potentially lead to, a future generation of addiction. So I know that I've mentioned it in the intro and a couple times throughout the last few episodes that I went to school for psychology. I wanted to work with children and kind of help with people that had been abused. And I did an internship with CPS. And oftentimes the houses that we went into, there was a lot of drug use, or, the parents were alcoholics and they were, abusing or neglecting their kids. It was a lot of that that was involved. And I kind of have a little bit of personal experience in it, but this is still a topic that is so close to my heart. Some of my dearest friends have had it, struggled with addiction. My father, my grandpa, it's kind of been in the family, and it's such a common disease. And I want to share a little bit about it and my experience and what I have found about addiction and how it affects, us, not only us, but our future generations. So what is the root cause of addiction? Is addiction a learned behavior, by watching generations prior, learning to use substances for coping? Is it just something that's genetic? Like, what is it? Like, when you think of addiction and you know that, it runs in the family, what do you think happens? There are studies that have shown that there's a direct connection and that it is kind of genetic, so to speak. And I think it's more, along the lines of a learned behavior. You learn to cope by turning to a substance, whatever your drug of choice, so to speak, is. My dad struggled with alcohol as his father did before him, and who knows how many generations prior. One of my first memories of my dad is we were in drive-thru, and when we left drive-thru, we got pulled over, and my dad had been drinking and driving. And, I was really little, so I didn't really know anything about it. And my dad wasn't a bad dad or anything like that, but he definitely, he liked to drink. And I remember he was arrested that night, and I don't remember a whole bunch of logistics, but I do know that he just quit drinking, like cold turkey, just stopped, because, it was a small town, and it was some relative, I believe it was my dad's cousin, that, was talking to him at the police station. He was in the police force and basically told my dad he had to get his life together or he could risk losing me. He can't be drinking and driving, especially with me in the car. And my dad just stopped, and like no questions asked. He got it together for me because he didn't want to lose me. So that's, looking back now, I realize that my dad broke who knows how many, generations of trauma. And, in that moment, he decided that he wanted better for me, that he just stopped. And he set such a high bar that it just boggles my mind that parents can't just do that. And I know that that's unfair to say, because I know that addiction is horrible and it's so hard, and so many people try, and it's almost unbearable. So there's definitely no judgment here. However, it is mind-boggling to me how, some people can just quit cold turkey like my dad did, and other people who just struggle and struggle and struggle. Again, there's no judgment for the parents that have, gotten sober, then relapsed, or struggle to get sober and can't just stop cold turkey or need assistance. Like, I get that. I do. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge my dad and how strong he is and, was to be able to just decide he was done. Because later in life, I became a little too dependent on my medicine that was prescribed to me. I was given some narcotics to help with my various mental health issues. I began to use them not as prescribed in 2012 when we were going through the divorce, like things were going on. I had just found out that, I had cancer. And that same day, my husband decided he didn't want to still be married to me. And I tried overdosing with these prescriptions that I was given. And I mixed them with alcohol, and I was trying to skirt around the underlying issues, which led me to that. And while I was able to just quit after that, like my father did, because that pushed me to be able to do it. Like, if my dad can do it, I can too. And I cannot give my dad enough credit for how he did it, and how hard it must have been, because he had just, lost his wife. I was just going through a divorce. Like, my mom actually passed away at a super young age from heart issues. So, like, putting myself in my dad's shoes and looking at it from his perspective, like, it gave me a whole new respect for him, and how hard he had to try for me. And it kind of helped push me through, my little addiction. I wouldn't say it wasn't little, because obviously I still struggle with it. I still crave it sometimes. Like, there's times that I want to go and, take a Xanax, because I just cannot cope. And for me, it is because, for coping purposes, I just want that escape, that release. And, while I have been sober since 2012, and I was only, taking the prescribed medicine not as directed for about 6 months, it was still long enough to leave an impact on my life. And I definitely still struggled with it. Okay, so why did I turn to pills in the first place? Why does anybody turn to any kind of substance in the first place? Again, for me, at least, it was my escape. I went to school for, psychology, and went through, substance abuse classes and such, and I still became addicted to my pills. Like, I knew all of that, and I still chose it anyway. Like, what is so powerful about, addiction, that it pulls in even when you do have the knowledge and the experience to avoid it? For me, again, it was that release, and just trying to cope with, past traumas, growing up in an abusive situation. I do want to get into that, but it's really hard for me to know how to navigate, because I don't want to offend anybody that knew us growing up, or to make it sound like my parents were absolutely horrendous, and that I don't want to play that victim role, so to speak, because my parents did better than their parents did, and I'm doing better than my parents did. And it's just a constant evolving, and there is no such thing as a perfect parent, I'm coming to realize. And, my parents, at least my dad, he was doing the best that he could. And my dad was also a victim of abuse, and, domestic abuse. And looking back now, I wish I would have had that realization when I was a teenager, because I probably wouldn't be as estranged from my family as I am now. My relationship with my dad is definitely mending, and I'm working on, my relationship with my siblings again. They don't fully understand the reasons why I'm the black sheep, so to speak. There's multiple reasons for that, but one day at a time, and I am repairing my relationships and fixing my mistakes. And I'm thankful for that, for, a second chance to be able to do that. But the fact still does remain that, there are certain aspects of my childhood that was traumatic, that was abusive, that was neglectful. And that is what I'm here to talk about, to spread light on. And because I know that I'm not the only one. And I know that it can feel lonely, even though there's so many of us out there who have had similar experiences. So, yeah, I still chose my pills. And looking back, that's so crazy to me because like I knew better and yet I didn't do better. So a lot of it, again, like I said, was the trauma. And, I felt abandoned by my sister, and I talked about that an episode or two ago. And I watched my dad struggle to be a better dad than he had. And I think a lot of it was situational too. I just had a baby. I was, feeling suicidal. I was going through that divorce, the cancer. I had so much going on that I didn't know what else to do. Like, what can I do? If I just pop these pills, I'm going to sleep and I'm just going to forget about it. And trauma alone can cause a lot of mental health issues, with feelings of shame and guilt and, needing that mental escape. You fight so hard, but yet you just want your brain to be silenced. And again, that can often stem from like that feeling of silence as a kid. If you don't learn how to regulate your emotions when you're little, you're not going to be able to regulate your emotions as an adult unless you put in the work. And I think that is where addiction forms, is we're not able to, communicate effectively where we're at in the feeling, and we feel so alone. We don't feel like we're supported. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues with addicts, is just, even if they do have the people and they do have that support, they do not feel like they can communicate where they are. So going back a little bit to those feelings of shame and guilt, a lot of people hold a lot of regret as well. And I think that it almost puts you in this victim mentality, especially if you have people that, are constantly condescending and talking down on you, making you feel worthless. You almost get that attitude, if you can't beat it, you might as well just submit to it type of attitude. You are looking for that emotional disconnect, and that's why, you so often lean to a different substance. And, it's that constant seeking that disconnect. And some of the feelings besides shame and guilt that I think play a part in, the start of an addict's journey is self-loathing. You don't necessarily care that you become self-destructive and that your behaviors are super risky. You feel like you almost deserve it in a way. Like, I felt like I deserved whatever happened to me because I was a bad person. I don't even know where I began to think this, but, I thought that maybe I was a bad kid and that's why my mom died. Like, it had nothing to do with me. Like, I don't even know where that idea came from, because I was so hateful about myself and I held so much guilt that I had nowhere to put it. I didn't have the tools in 2012 that I have now. I didn't have that mental capacity that I do now because I wasn't putting in the work to be able to communicate and to, talk to a therapist. Even though I literally went to school for it, I could help other people, but to me, I felt like I was beyond help. And, feeling that rejection and that abandonment, the PTSD from this different traumatic experiences, there were certain memories that were basically living rent free in my brain that just made me spiral. I was battling faith, and I felt like there was, a lack of support from my husband. I wasn't really with any family or friends at the time. Like, I fucked up with my best friend, so we weren't talking at the time, and she was my emotional support when I was like this. So, I was burning bridges left and right, all because I was addicted to some pills, and the few people that I did have to support me weren't there because of my own self-destructive behavior. And I think that was a lot of my own root issues. And I think that a lot of those feelings, the circumstances might be different. There might be different reasons why, but I think the feelings are all the same for an addict. Like, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but I truly believe that. We self-loathe, we feel regret, shame, guilt, like all the things. And I don't know, but I just know that it's wild. And to anybody that may be struggling with it currently and are listening to this, like, you got this. Like, you can do this. I know it's so hard, and I'm always here if you need to talk to me, because it's definitely, it's easy to talk about it, but until you talk to somebody who's lived it and who has experienced it, like, you just don't get it until you get it. So there are multiple different studies that show that if you grow up in a home with an addict, whether it's a parent or just the person who is in charge of caring for you, you pick up a lot on their coping mechanism. And which is obviously true, as, you know, any caretaker. Our children see how we respond, and then that's how they learn how to react. We are a product of our environment. And I know that my dad, when he was mad, he would just say he was disappearing, and he would leave for hours on end. Looking back, I probably think that he was just cooling off, because we have hot tempers in our family, and I know that as an adult now, because I actually have to do that. But as a kid, when I seen that, like, I felt like he was just leaving until the problem disappeared, and then he would come back, and basically we would all just act like nothing ever happened. We would never talk about it. We would never talk about it. And so it sent mixed messages to my brain, and I picked up on that coping. So when I get hot-headed and when I get really mad, like, I've already talked about it, my flight response is strong. Whether I'm mad, whether I'm sad, whether I'm, hurt, or whatever my emotion, I run. And it's so stupid, because I have the biggest support system that I think anybody could ever ask for. Like, I have 2 partners that absolutely love and adore me. I have the best kids. My boss is phenomenal. Like, I have the best friends in the world that know mental health and their own struggles, so they know how to help me. Like, I have the best support. And yet, when I'm in a mood, I just run away, and I'm like, oh, nobody loves me. And it's just so stupid. It bothers me that I do that, and I'm really working on that. But now, because I'm like super self-conscious of that, and I'm trying to fix that, I've retract, whatever the word is. I've kind of fallen back into the habit of talking shit about myself out loud, not just in my head, but like actually out loud. And the other day, my kids heard it, and I regret that 100%, not only because they had to hear it, but seeing what it did to Saoirse, because Saoirse picked up on that so fast, and now all I hear is, oh, I'm just the worst kid, and it drives me absolutely crazy. But I can't even say shit, because I'm the one who taught her that. Like, I'm the one who, I said the same thing the other day, and now ever since I said that, that's her, anytime she gets in trouble, well, I guess I'm just a bad kid. I guess nobody loves me. And we're healing, y'all. We're healing. It's definitely not perfect. And Saoirse is definitely either going to be the death of me or the kid that pushes me to a whole new level of evolving, because she is literally a mini me, and it drives me absolutely crazy. And I know if my partners are going to listen to this, they're going to laugh and be like, yeah, there you go. You finally admitted it. But she is definitely my mini me, and always pushing me to a better me. And I hope that I don't fuck her up too bad. Sorry for all the curse words. I hope you're not listening to this where little kids can hear. Definitely not for little ears. Anyway, often as, an addictive parent, an addict is abuse, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, sometimes even sexual, maybe one, maybe a few, maybe even all. Kids watch their, abusive mother or father, and that kind of roots that trauma into their brain, which leads to that needing that escape. And, growing up with an absent parent can also lead to potential addictive behavior. Example, a parent is in jail for whatever reason, that feeling of abandonment, it roots down into the brains as well. And maybe even guilt and a little bit of shame to, carry that parents' mistakes. Say they're in jail for something and they go to school and they get bullied, or they feel like, oh, your dad so-and-so, didn't he do this? Or your mom so-and-so, didn't she do that? Our kids carry our legacy, good or bad, and that can often lead to a lot of, how they turn out as adults. That feeling of abandonment alone can be so powerful. When one hears of addiction, you think alcohol and pills are hard drugs, but there are, many different other types of drugs as well. We're just kind of talking a little bit about the harder stuff, so to speak, today. Yeah. So, like drugs and alcohol, they inhibit parents' ability to function. I mean, we all know that. It slows down your response, or it makes you aggressive. It kind of weakens your impulse control, which often leads to a higher abuse or neglect rate. Kids definitely who experience this type of home environment as they're little tend to feel really lonely. And I think that alone is what keeps the cycle going. Has anyone listened to that song by Dax called Dear Alcohol? It's such a good song, man. He talks about how, I got wasted because I didn't want to deal with myself, drowning my thoughts until I, feel all right. Drink because the demons roam, they follow us wherever we go, makes my heart cold. And then later on, it talks about how, alcohol or addiction makes us feel alone, how you drink to chase that person that you are when you're high or drunk, because they're often a different version of ourselves and they make us feel better about ourselves, whether it be, in the song he says, I'm cocky, confident, don't give a damn about what anybody else thinks. Like, that was me. It made me feel like a better version of me, but realistically, it was such a bad version of me. And it's such a bad version of me. But it's such a powerful song. If you haven't heard it, I definitely recommend listening to it, because it's got such a good, powerful message that I think any addict or alcoholic can relate to, because it's so real and it's so vulnerable, and it talks about those deep roots of why we turn to substance anyway. So we talked a little bit about the whys, the reasons, the deep-rooted issues, the traumas, all the stuff. It is possible to recover. I like to think of the 5 Ps when I'm feeling like I want to go and, back in on a binge. And I think they're very powerful, that I think all addicts use. Passion, power, purpose, practice, and perseverance. And I love how social media has really just eats it up in a good way, about all these influencers that have, been an addict or an alcoholic, and they're on social media and they're raising such awareness, and they're talking about it, and they're talking about their message, and, the things that they've done, and, the things that they've been through, and encouraging people that we do recover. And I feel like that's a perfect example of the 5 Ps. They're finding that power within them to stay sober, and they're giving their passion, for a purpose, and with practice, their perseverance pays off with sobriety. Sorry, that was really loud, and that was my computer. Anyway, I think the hardest part of staying sober, at least for me, is, fighting the demons and fighting that feeling of loneliness. To truly recover, I think that we have to face those demons head on and, fight those feelings. And the episode prior, I talked about the tools to find yourself. That is what I used anyway. I think for every person it's different, obviously, but I think essentially the structure is the same. We all thrive off from making sure we're taking time for ourselves, that we're surrounding ourselves with positive people. We're constantly digging into ourselves and, getting down to the root issues and realizing what our triggers are and what areas of our life that we need to work on to prevent that from happening. And we have to do that work. And again, like I'm so thankful that my dad broke that curse for us, for me, for my kids, and hopefully it continues on. And while I don't think that, we all have our own individual choice, I definitely think that he healed a whole line in our family of knowing what to do. And I hope that it continues, that as we progress, that, and the generations continue, that we just keep teaching our kids and we're just continuously better than the generation prior. And we can do that even, you might not have kids, or, you might not want kids, but struggle with that. Like, there are always people that you will inspire to, if you keep staying sober. Like, and I've never met a sober person that is not thankful that they got sober. Like, it's hard. It is, but it's definitely worth the fight. And I love seeing all the recovery reels and TikToks and stories out there. People, being 15 years, being 3 years, being a week, or, however long. And then it breaks my heart when they relapse, but then they bounce right back because they remember their why. They don't want to ever be there again. And again, I know that it's not as easy as, well, I wouldn't say easy. Not everybody is as successful as my dad was with just stopping cold turkey. But the fight is honorable. It's definitely honorable. You just got to continuously be putting in the work in yourself. And it's such a hard journey. It's such a long journey. It's definitely not something that you're going to just wake up and be like, oh, okay, I'm fixed. I'm better now. I'm not going to ever struggle. Like, it's been 11 years and I still struggle some days really, really bad. And then I just have to, find my why. Anyways, that is it for today. That's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, feel free to share it. If you share it, make sure you tag me in it so I can give you some love. I appreciate your support during this process of this podcast. My Instagram is hmcgarrity90. TikTok is hmcgarrity1. That is a literal shit show, you guys. Saoirse likes TikToks, so if you want to go follow me, I'm sure you will see plenty of TikToks of Saoirse and Aiden as well. She's digging it. Also, my Facebook is Heather McGarrity, and then we have that Facebook community group, the Savage Daughter Podcast. I do like to lean into that community and that group and kind of hear other people's opinions and stories and experiences on certain subjects that I talk about, and I really lean into that community. So if you have any suggestions for future episodes that you would like to hear about, please go give us, a follow on that, and that we can connect. And I love talking to people, and I love hearing everyone's experiences and whatnot. So anyway, that is it for today. If you liked the music in this podcast, please go give Ian a follow on Spotify. His username is Hi, I'm Ian, all lowercase, all together, no spaces or anything. He's got some pretty dope music out right now. I know he's getting ready to launch some more. So anyway, please go follow him. I'd greatly appreciate it. But that is it for today, you guys. Peace out.